This has done the overall situation a power of good for men like Steve Bauer, Greg LeMond and the others, because they now have lost one of their main adversaries. This is now the overall situation this morning. Steve Bauer leading by 30 seconds from Ronan Pensek, and Franz Masson dropping back to third place yesterday. The favourites, well, Raul Alcala ranks best of those. He's in 6th place, but look at this, almost 10 minutes behind overall. In 19th place, Stephen Roach. 21st place, Eric Brücking, and the world champion and the defending champion here, Greg LeMond, in 24th place, but almost 11 minutes behind. And then we go right down to 95th place to find Robert Miller of Scotland, and 109th for our pre-race favourite, Pedro Delgado. Today, the riders faced the longest stage, and behind me is Rouen Cathedral, where they're coming towards us at about 42 kilometres an hour. We've estimated that this stage of some 300 kilometres will take the riders between 8 and 9 hours to accomplish. That's some long day in the office today for the riders of the Tour de France. It's not a difficult stage over the terrain, but the weather has made it rather nasty, and Laurent Fignon has already decided to give up. Steve Bauer will have his hands full again today.
And looking down on the main field here, up ahead of these two, this big bunch of riders, that is Gerrit Zolleveld alone, and then behind him he's being chased by Konishev, the Soviet rider, but there's been yet another tumble in the field, and the field has split up again, as it did yesterday, into 5 or 6 groups, and we understand that down in the crash, Moreno Argentin, Jelle Nydam and Robert Miller. We equally understand, according to Race Radio, they have got back on the bikes and are chasing, but at the moment, this race once more split up into 5 groups. And just look at the faces now of these riders as the rain begins to team down. This has been a very, very active long stage in the Tour de France, 301 kilometres, and the 7-11 riders here, Paul, again driving the field. They're turning out to be quite a strong team, aren't they?
Well, they've decided now with the leader of, with Steve Bauer in the lead, they've decided they've got a good chance. And here you've got the man on the front, Sean Yates, the man from Forest Row, giving it full force there.
Confirmation of the gap. Zolleveld 6 minutes 20 seconds ahead of Konishev. These two have been chasing each other now for many, many kilometres. And then Konishev is ahead of the field by 3 minutes and 10 seconds. So it's almost 10 minutes lead for the man out in front, Gerrit Zolleveld. And another retirement I've got to give you news of today straight away too is that of Marco Giovanetti, the winner of the Tour of Spain. And he's gone out of the race today as well. So 2 likely overall winners when we get to the mountains have lost their place in the peloton today. Quite an amazing day, because all this is happening, don't forget, on what we call the easier sections of the Tour de France, the flat roads where riders try to protect their gains and don't attack so much, because the time trial on Saturday should have shaped this overall classification. And then after that, of course, we're down in the Alps. But contrary to that, Paul, this race has never let up, and now we've got another example of the field splitting up under the pressures of a crash.
Well, you've got to be on your guard all the time. And obviously, the riders riding at the front stand less chance of having a crash. The crashes, especially in the windy conditions like we have today, tends to split up the field at the back, and it gives the riders a very hard chase. The riders at the front here, the 7-11 riders who are going through and off to try and keep the pace up, they won't even know what's happened behind. They're chasing to make sure that they can pull back the leaders.
Oh, here is Gerrit Zolleveld, who has been out in front for a long, long time today. The race started very actively too. A group of 7 riders broke clear, none of them near to Steve Bauer, but they gave them a lead of 5 minutes before they actually chased them down and brought them back into the pack. And then Gerrit Zolleveld, over the top of a small climb, decided to try and keep on the pressure. And it worked, and he went away. 30 kilometres still to ride now. This is Konishev, who is second on the road. The main field behind them completely split up at the minute. And as I say, just 30 kilometres to go. Another good day in the Tour de France. So join us after the break.
Hello again, and before we rejoin the action, let's recap today's big news, which is that Laurent Fignon, the two-time winner of the Tour de France, is out of the action and won't be back. He pulled up after 100 kilometres of today's stage, and following a quick conference with his team manager Cyril Guimard, it was all over, seeming to confirm rumours that he'd injured a calf towards the end of yesterday's stage to Le Mans Saint-Michel. Since Fignon last won the race in 1984, he hasn't had a good time of it, abandoning in 1986 and of course losing in such demoralising style to Greg LeMond in the final time trial last year. He's also had a pretty rocky relationship with the press, throwing his water bottle at a photographer on a stage in 1988 and spitting at a cameraman last year. The animosity is fully returned, and the knives will almost certainly be out for Fignon in the press in France tomorrow. The full details behind Fignon's withdrawal will be bringing you later. Suffice it to say, his chances of avenging Greg LeMond's victory of last year are now gone, and the rest of the field won't be shedding too many tears about that. For the latest details on the men who are still in the race, back to Phil.
And as we look back at the action now, it is Steve Bauer himself who's trying to liven things up. And Laurent Fignon tonight, by the way, well, his hotel here in Rouen is already under siege by the press. And it wouldn't surprise me if Laurent Fignon doesn't turn up there tonight. Steve Bauer, the yellow jersey in the Tour de France, having lost one major rival today, is trying to lose the whole field here, Paul. Look at this.
It's actually just jumping away for the points, for the bonus there. He gets second place, which will give him another 4 seconds. He obviously wants a good margin to keep himself in yellow there.
So, one of the 8 special bonus points on the route today, and Bauer takes 4 more seconds, just like he did yesterday as we came towards the end. Konashev, by the way, has been swept up now. His lead quickly diminished as the field are rolling along at a tremendous speed. Despite the distance today, they are well ahead of the expected time of arrival that the organisers set them. Sean Yates is one of the reasons. Look at him on the left of our picture, going very quickly indeed. The concern now with the 7-11 riders is that Gerrit Zolleveld is simply too far ahead. The last check we had, he was 9.5 minutes, and he is only 10 minutes 24 seconds behind Steve Bauer overall. That's gone out a little bit now because of Bauer getting 4 seconds there in the sprint. He's reducing his deficit just a little bit. But they're going to have to bring back Gerrit Zolleveld to a manageable time gap here. They're certainly not going to catch him, I wouldn't say, with something like 18-19 kilometres left to go. But they will try desperately to reduce that time gap. Here we are now with Gerrit Zolleveld. He's only ever won one stage in his 6 Tours de France before, and that wasn't in fact too far away from here at Pont-Audemer. So he's used to winning in the Normandy area. This is a typical plan by Jan Ross, the manager of the Buckler team, who admits he has no rider capable of winning the Tour de France on his team. The one man who may have had a chance, Rolf Goltz, simply wasn't selected for the team because he told Jan Ross he intended to leave the team at the end of the season. So Ross said, right, then you're not coming to the Tour de France. So he left Rolf Goltz back in Germany, and he has no man who can win the Tour de France, but he has plenty of men who can win stages. And this, Paul, I think, is a cheeky move by Jan to try and steal the yellow jersey for a few days as well.
Well, I think he must have been a little bit upset with what happened to Frans Maassen yesterday when he lost those few seconds on the run-in. And this is obviously the kind of move that we can expect from the Buckler team, because they, in the past, they were the Super Convex team. They were the team that were the kings of the flat stages, and they obviously want to keep that title. That's why today Jan Ross has launched one of his men into the attack.
Puts all the pressure on 7-11 too, because they have to now take up the chase, and this is what the rest of the race has been waiting to see. The 7-11 team doing all of the work on the longest day, because of course we're rolling very steadily but surely towards the mountains, which start in the Jura on Sunday, and before that on Saturday, the first long crucial time trial when Steve Bauer might concede some of his lead to the star riders in this race.
Well, Zolleveld must be feeling pretty confident about winning here, because there go the glasses. Obviously getting himself ready for the ride up the finishing straight, and he probably wants to get a little bit of extra publicity for his glasses sponsor there. Gerrit Zolleveld, who earlier this year was the winner of the Ronde van Midden-Zeeland, is used to conditions like this.
Well, they can normally change the lenses of those glasses when it's raining to clear ones, and I guess Gerrit didn't take them with him today, and now he's not too sure where he is.
There's Bauer coming back to the front of the bunch, just keeping an eye now on all these little moves going away, just to assert his presence and let the Z team know that Steve Bauer's still in the race. At the front of the race, Phil, it's just 4 kilometres to go for Gerrit Solleveld, as we've got here Gilles Delion, a French rider from the Helvetia team, trying to jump clear.
Gilles Delion, who comes from the Chambéry area of France, where the World Championships were last year, in his first Tour de France, and the leader, I think, of the Helvetia La Swiss team.
It looks very much there as if that's Eric van der Aarden jumping across the gap, doing the work for Gerrit Solleveld, who's away in the front.
And I think, the outstretched hand, I think, Paul's to call up his team car.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether he's got a problem or he just wants a quick word with Jan Raas to know what the situation is behind him. Obviously feeling a little bit, it isn't in fact Raas, it's the second team manager who's coming up to have a quick word with Solleveld. Obviously a little bit worried about what the situation is behind.
Well, it can only be good news with the distance that's left to go. Forget it. Because at this stage of the race, they're not going to pull him back. And the crowd, despite being soaking wet, are standing there watching him pass through. A little bit of a tricky finish for a big field in wet conditions here in Rouen, because they cross over the river, over the Seine, down the other bank, and then back over the river bridge again. But it looks as though the return to the front of the bunch of the yellow jersey has brought a little bit of sanity to the front of the bunch, and they've stopped counter-attacking. They've obviously spotted that Bauer had slipped back down the field.
Looks now as if Sean Yates has come back to the front of the bunch again to get a little bit of order, because that was quite precarious coming down that descent with riders like Ronan Ponsek jumping away. They obviously don't want any more little moves like that in the last few kilometres.
Greg LeMond up into third slot as well, keeping out of trouble like he did yesterday. He had no sympathy for the riders who lost time yesterday. He simply said that they shouldn't be back there, because that's always the most dangerous part of the field in the last 50 kilometres. This is the underpass, so we're in the streets of Rouen now for Gerrit Solleveld. He's not too far away from the finish, probably about 3 kilometres, I would think. And the echelon you can see there, the diagonal line indicating the wind is coming from the top left of our screen. And the riders all trying to get on the inside of the other men to be out of the wind. There isn't too much wind. This rain has calmed down the windy conditions, but they must be terribly unpleasant now for the Tour riders.
Probably about 4 or 5 minutes.
And Sean Yates doing a sterling job for 7-11. He looks to be riding himself into the Tour de France. He was in fact in doubt whether he would come to this Tour de France. They tested him right up to the race date itself and then decided to put him in. They've never regretted it. Sean Yates is riding superbly again now. There's Eric van der Aarden come alongside him. All the Buckler boys now making sure there's nobody going to make any last-minute efforts, but there's no need to worry. We're on the cobblestones at Rouen. We're about 1.5 kilometres from the finish. And over to the right now. If he looks, he will see the finishing line, but I'm afraid he goes a long way round. He crosses the Seine here. Then he turns sharp right and runs down the other bank before he turns right again, back over the Seine. Then he'll turn left and up to the finishing line. That's the way it should go. And Solleveld is feeling a very happy man indeed now.
You can see there, Bauer, just in the bottom of the screen, keeping out of trouble at the front of the race, making sure that nothing happens in these last few kilometres, keeping away from the crashes. As we go on to the Flamme Rouge now, the red flag, the red kite, Gerrit Solleveld has 1 kilometre to go. What an impressive ride by this man. 185 miles a day, and he's done 65 of them up the front on his own all day. What a lonely way to get a victory.
And the second win for the team Buckler, Jan Raas's team. He comes here for stage wins, and every year he goes away with a sack full of them. This is the second one, and this tour really has hardly yet begun.
I think now, Phil, we're going to find over the next few flat stages that the blue and white jerseys are going to replace the green jerseys of the Super Confex team.
And this corner, and these corners in this last kilometre or so, are going to be tremendously dangerous in the main field. Because there'll be a lot of riders, the kamikaze sprinters, who will take the risks because they want the prize money, of course, at the end of the stage. And they also want to prove to the race that they are the best sprint finishers. Olaf Ludwig will be pushing on there to try and score highly on the finishing line. for his green jersey. Look at that, 7 hours 42, an excellent time today. Inside 8 hours for this ride, and look how gently he's come round that left-hander. There's the finishing line. That's what the sprinters will see shortly. 350 meters to go. Gerrit Zolleveld is in no hurry now. He's failed in his quest, if that's what it was, to get the yellow jersey. He came within half a minute of it. He applauds the crowd. It's his second ever stage victory in the Tour de France. Last time came in 1985 at Pont-Audemer, which isn't so far away. So he certainly likes the northern coastline of France, and it's the second win for the Buckler team. And so there'll be some more celebrations in the hotel tonight. 7 hours, 43 minutes and 7 seconds. What a day in the saddle. And now we can go back to the main field. They are now on the cobblestone, so they're just over 2 kilometers from the line. And this is Sean Yates, again staying at the front as long as he possibly can before the sprinters queue up behind him. Tremendous turn of speed, Sean Yates.
Well, Phil, that's really why they brought Sean Yates into this team, because he's really a respected member of the 7-Eleven team, because he can put such a spurt of speed on, stay at the front, put everyone in a line behind him and stop all these attacks.
But the sprinters are crowding around him now as they make that right-hand bend very, very precariously indeed. They'll be going under the kilometre banner very shortly, and the rush is started down the outside. The green jersey of Ludwig is the rider that we would expect to be seeing up there somewhere now. Certainly Steve Bauer, I don't think, will mix himself up with what could be a very dangerous finish indeed today. Under the kilometre kite, a couple of riders here have gone away. They are almost impossible to pick up in the spray there. They're also wearing racing capes today, which is blocking out the numbers. But the crowd enjoying the spectacle despite the fact that the rain is absolutely teeming down now. Two riders taking a risk, and they've got the gap. And it looks to me as though we have one of the Lotto boys here, and I'm wondering if, in fact, Musiu is going again. The rider who won, and Etienne de Wilde, I think, is the other rider who's come in behind him. Two sprinters going clear of the field. De Wilde, I think it is, in second place. Not too sure about the Lotto man. The gap on the left, by the way, is the minutes gone by that Zolleveld has been in, so they really cut that back, haven't they? They'll be home inside 5 minutes of Gerrit Zolleveld. And the green jersey, too, is nowhere to be seen at the minute of the Panasonic team. So that's a little bit surprising. De Wilde is going to come over the top, and I think it's Redant is the rider on the left, but it looks as though De Wilde will get second place, but very, very closely indeed on the line. De Wilde takes second place, and the third place rider then on the photo, it was indeed a Johan Musiu, the rider who won yesterday. He's got third place. And I think that Olaf Ludwig might well have led the bunch home as well. But what a difficult finish for the sprinters, and Etienne de Wilde there riding very, very well indeed to break clear.
Well, here's confirmation of the stage result. A win for Gerrit Zolleveld, but the photo finish, in fact, reversing second place. And Johan Musiu, the winner yesterday, he takes second ahead of the other Belgian sprinter, Etienne de Wilde. Olaf Ludwig taking fourth place in the main field and continuing to build a big lead in that green jersey competition. But the story today, of course, the loss of Laurent Fignon, the French #1 who finished second in the Tour de France last year to Greg LeMond. It all started to go wrong for Laurent today when he was delayed by a crash at 122 kilometers. He didn't actually fall, but a lot of riders did, and he again lost contact with the leaders. This is Eric Caritou, who's bleeding from the right leg. He was cleaned up, and he did rejoin the race. Another rider in trouble today, Raul Alcala. He had to come alongside the doctor's car because he too has injured his right knee. And at the finishing line, Robert Miller trails in over 2 minutes behind the leaders today. And look at this. He's covered in mud, and clearly he's fallen as well. Now, these are the easy days on the Tour de France, when they're supposed to be just sprint finishes. And this tour has been so different, hasn't it? It all's gone wrong for Laurent Fignon, and now we've lost one of the top contenders in the Tour de